Yeah, welcome to a Thursday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside my man from CBSSports.com. Sam Quinn is here. And man, I don't know if we have to start rolling on this show earlier because Sam comes in hot with like these things that are happening in his life. And he let us in, both me and producer Aaron, on how like his cereal intake practices. Tell me about this.
Okay, so my oven is out. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but I've been eating a lot of cereal lately because I don't have an oven. I can't cook things. For the first time in my life on Tuesday, I don't know why Election Day was why I decided this was an appropriate time to do this. I put milk on my cereal. I have always been a dry cereal man, and I got to tell you from the experience, not a fan. I think milk makes cereal worse. I like what is the appeal? The core appeal of cereal is the crunch. Milk ruins the structural integrity of the cereal. It doesn't add anything flavor wise. I am not a fan of milk on my cereal. I am going back to dry cereal.
Um, I have a lot of questions here, up to and including how you could have become an adult man and not had milk in your cereal prior to now. Like, did you have like non-dairy milk? Is it like the kind of milk that's the problem, or it's just the liquid itself?
No, I just didn't grow up in a milk heavy household, right? Like my family wasn't saying like for breakfast, here's your I don't know, cinnamon toast crunch with milk. When I had cereal, I had to seek it out myself. And not being a heavy milk guy, I just never thought to like include it. I was fine with the cereal on the rare occasions that I had it without any milk. Just I knew in the world milk and cereal was common. It just by the time I was like having cereal on my own, milk just wasn't a big part of my life. I was always a water over milk guy. Like when you had dinner as a kid growing up, were you water or were you milk?
I think I had like iced tea or water. Yeah.
Yeah, like I had friends who like the standard drink at their dinner table was milk. That just wasn't me. We never really had milk in my house. So like the only like I was consuming dairy when you'd have ice cream, you'd have things like that. But like we never just had jugs of milk in my house.
I just want to say to all the dairy farmers out there that you're a friend of our show, and if you have any problems, please send those along to Sam Quinn at
Oh,
CBS.
dairy. I'm not anti-dairy. I just don't like it on my cereal. I'll have
Yeah,
milk
don't
in
put it on
any
his
number of other ways.
don't, don't put it on his cereal. Thursdays are quickly becoming one of my favorite days of the week because Sam joins us. We have a lot of non-dairy cereal news to get into, up to and including as we came on the program. Shams reported that Tyrese Maxey is out for a couple of weeks because of
That's
his
not
right
good.
hamstring. So things go from terrible to beyond terrible for the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll get into that a little bit later, as well as PG returning to LA. Didn't go well for him or the Sixers because nothing does anymore. We'll talk about the shorthanded Nuggets handing the Oklahoma City Thunder their first loss of the entire season. The Lakers end a disastrous road trip with a thud, and we'll do our team of the night. But first, Sam, we got to start with the Warriors. There were, like your mileage may vary on the Warriors and who they played to start the season and whether or not their returns were real or not. They looked super real last night. They beat the Celtics in Boston 118-112. They are 7-1. They are undefeated on the road. It was the first loss for Boston in Boston this season. That defense looks good. I thought, Sam, we've seen Steve Kerr earlier in the season. He was like, we're deep, we're talented. I'm going to run a lot of guys out there. He was playing 14 guys some nights, 15 guys some nights. I thought for sure last night was going to be one of the nights where they tightened up the rotation. They didn't. They went with 11 guys. I think they're real.
Yeah, it's funny because it really did feel like a playoff game last night. I thought it was the second game I'd watched all season that had a playoff atmosphere after Denver, Minnesota. But it had a playoff atmosphere with 11 guys in the Warriors rotation. And I wonder if that's not an accident, if they can play at a much higher intensity because nobody is playing too many minutes. Like, even Steph, I don't think, like, I remember thinking in the fourth quarter last night, like, when are they going to bring Steph back in? The
Yeah.
offense is getting a little clunky. That's kind of the one complaint I have with them is that they are so dependent on Steph to generate shots for them. If they do find a way to make a big veteran trade in the middle of the year, I'd feel a lot better. They're just short one creator. The defense was on point last night. And I thought the game plan was great too by Steve Kerr. They
Yep.
blitzed a ton in the
Yes, they did.
in the first half. Now
Tatum,
you can't
they
blitz
blitzed the hell out of Tatum.
you can't blitz Boston at full strength. They just have too much shooting. But Boston was playing Cato with Jaylen Brown out and with Porzingis out, so that made that possible, and it was really, really effective. What I like about this Warriors team defensively is that they just have a ton of schematic versatility. You can switch with Draymond and Trace Jackson Davis. Like you can blitz, you can do a lot of stuff that other teams with more typical big men and less depth don't really have on the menu. So the defense is there. The offense is kind of my only question at this point. Man, that defense was good.
The defense has been good all season. They're second in defensive rating. They're third in offensive rating, which is a little bit of a surprise to me because outside of Steph, I have the same concerns that you do, but the numbers just work out for them. My question for you, actually, two things here. One, I thought it was interesting who they closed with. They closed with Steph, Draymond, Looney, Buddy Hield, who just cannot miss a shot anymore now that he's left Philadelphia, and Wiggins, who his back might be acting up a little bit, but I thought who they closed with was interesting. But my question for you is the playing 11, 12 deep, Kerr going like deep into his bench and like really staggering these guys sustainable over the course of a season? Like we haven't really seen a quality NBA team go this deep into their bench like over the course of a full season, or do you think like this is what it is?
I think it's fine in the regular season, especially because guys are going to get hurt, right? Like you're not going to have 12 guys available to you all 82 games, and they lost Steph for a couple last week, and it turned out to be fine. Like I almost wonder if this might be the new trend. Have the Warriors gotten on top of this before everybody else, where the 82 game season is such a slog that you need to have 11 or 12 guys, right? Look at some of the teams that are thinner up top. Philly's a great example. They have the worst record in the NBA right now. Well, they're built around 3 guys. The Knicks are 3-4 through 7 games. They're built around 5 guys. Like having 11, 12 guys, it does a few things for you. Number one, it helps you keep guys fresh. Number two, it gives you so many different looks, right? Like that's kind of the benefit for the Warriors is if you're an opponent, you don't know who they're going to close with. It can be whoever's hot in a given game, whoever has the right matchup, whatever. And like, did I expect to see Kevon Looney closing games this year? No. Did it work? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm fine with it. I think if it's working, fine. Like as producer Aaron notes, Steph played 34 minutes last night. It was his first time above 27 all season. In the past, the Warriors died whenever Steph left the floor.
Sure.
If you're surviving the no Steph minutes, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and you know what, Steve Kerr, he gets a lot of heat for, especially from people like producer Aaron, who is a Warriors fan. Some Warriors fans, for whatever reason, I've never really understood it, are kind of down on Steve Kerr. But you know, he goes into the Olympics and he decides to sit Jason Tatum, and he gets murdered for it, and they won a gold medal. And by the way, we're going to talk in a second about Steve Kerr and Jason Tatum's quote unquote reunion last night, and Steve Kerr getting booed. But then this year, he's got this like large cast of characters, and I laughed. I literally laughed on this show when Steph went down, and he was like, "We've got the depth to sustain this. It's going to be okay. We can weather through this." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then they do, and they're playing all these guys, and it's working out. And to your point about, hey, this might be like they might have stumbled onto something here where it's a long season. It's 82 games. You're trying to keep guys fresh. They're staggering minutes, or they're keeping Steph from like having to play too much. He played 34 minutes last night, high water mark for the season. Otherwise, he hasn't been above 27, right? All of these things are like, I think, marks in Steve Kerr's favor, feathers in his cap. Like he has looked pretty good here, and like the theory of the case for him has worked out.
Yeah, Steve Kerr criticism is like one of my pet causes where I just think it's ridiculous.
Me
Warriors
too.
fans criticize Steve Kerr because they want him to be normal. What they want him to do is to play Steph 40 minutes and to run 50 Steph Draymond pick and rolls every night. Well, you can do that, and I'm not saying it's not going to work, but what that does is it makes you normal, and the Warriors have had God knows how much success over the last decade by being weird, right? By doing the strength and numbers thing, by playing the ball movement off ball offense. Like, I don't know how 4 championships doesn't validate a coach enough to be able to do unconventional things, and it's really working. You can't play 13 or 14 NBA players if they're not actual NBA players, right? This is key here. The Warriors actually have a dozen real NBA caliber players, and most of them are adults, right? These aren't, other than Kuminga, these aren't like young guys who are fighting for a contract. Podziemski, but they're so high on him that I think he's going to get his minutes no matter what.
Yeah,
But for the most part, these are guys that are established within the league that have played on enough bad teams that they recognize when they have something worthwhile here, and they're willing to sacrifice because they've already made their money and they already have their reputations in the league. So on a given night, like maybe some nights you play Buddy Hield 35 minutes and some nights you play him 12, and he's going to be cool either way.
I think you're right. Like the criticism Steve Kerr has gone too far for me. Last night, by the way, I thought he had a really good answer when he was asked about, hey, like, you're back here. He got booed, not surprisingly. He got booed in Boston, right? He didn't play Jason Tatum. Totally makes sense. But he got asked about it. He goes, he was asked, do you have any regrets over how it went down with Jason Tatum in the Olympics? And he said, no, I don't have any regrets because we won a gold medal. But he said he didn't enjoy not playing Tatum. It's just the way that it worked out. You've got a 40-minute game and 12 guys, and it's hard to shuffle that many guys in. And by the way, he didn't play Tyrese Halliburton either. But obviously, Jason Tatum is an incredibly good player. It's just that Steve Kerr it was put to some difficult choices. And I think that he's navigated those difficult choices pretty well, both in the Olympics and also with this year's Golden State Warriors team. I want to ask you too. So we were talking about the Warriors and how this little chunk, this little road stretch that they're on now is like the real litmus test, right? Because they started out 6-1, and I was like a little skeptical because like the competition that they played wasn't super great. Now
they anybody.
Okay, fair enough.
That.
All right,
yeah.
we'll ramp it up a little bit. But they did last night. They beat Boston in Boston. That's a win. It's hard for me to go statement win in early November, but kind of felt like, it's like in Bull Durham when Nuke LaLoosh tells Crash he wants to announce his presence with authority, and Crash goes, "What? I want to announce my presence with authority." That's kind of what they did last night. Now they've got the Cavs next, at the Cavs, and then they're at the Thunder, and then they're home against the Mavs, home against the Grizz, and then on the road against the Clippers, who offensively challenged, but defense is pretty good. Are you buying them coming out of this stretch looking as good as they've been?
Well, no, because as good as they've been is like best team in the NBA territory, right? Like 7-1, incredible net rating, incredible defensive metrics across the board. Like, I don't know that they're that good. And I think, like, I will pick Cleveland and I'll pick Oklahoma City against them just by virtue of home court advantage alone. But, like, I came into the year thinking they were going to be like what they were last year, right? Like, what were they, the 10 seed last year? Like, I thought they were going to be pretty good when they had everybody and a disaster anytime Steph missed time, just because I didn't think they had enough creation. So far this year, they've been awesome when they've had everybody and doable when they haven't had Steph. So, like, that's the difference between, I don't know, like 45 wins and like low to mid 50s. Like, that's kind of where I think they're going to land. I don't think 7-1 is a sustainable pace, but I came into the year thinking they were going to kind of be in the play-in race. Now I come in thinking this defense alone, plus having Steph on your team, okay, like top 6 team, like I'm feeling good about that. I think they've clearly been, alongside Oklahoma City and Phoenix, one of the 3 best teams in the West. Yeah, I'm better. Like I'm higher on them than I was 2 weeks ago. I would still like to see a little bit more before I pronounce the Warriors back and say like the race for the 5th title is on.
Yeah, I think that I had them back end of the play-in looking in. I think solid playoff team makes sense right now. And as this continues, like they're really making believers out of me. Producer Aaron likes to say through 30, all things are possible. I think that's probably true. Like solid playoff team right now. And I could buy in if they come out of these next, 5 games, 3-2, then all of a sudden I'm super buying on this. So
if you get one more out of the Thunder, Cavs, and Mavs and go 2-2 in that stretch, I'm feeling great.
Yeah, they absolutely should. What an incredible start for these guys. I have said this before in previous seasons on previous shows at other locations, but it's true. Like every time I go to bury the Warriors, or we go to bury the Warriors and think that it's over, they pop their head up. It's like the Undertaker meme. They just get up again when you think they're dead, and they're not. They're very much alive. So incredible start for them. Not such an incredible start for some other teams that we'll get to later on in the show, the Lakers and the Sixers. But we're going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to discuss the depleted Nuggets pulling off a very surprising win, giving Oklahoma City Thunder their first loss. We'll get into that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc.
A new crown awaits. taken. The journey to become European football royalty has begun.
A stunning goal.
The UEFA Europa League on CBS Sports Network and stream every match live on Paramount Plus.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder that you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app when you're in full screen mode, and you can tell us what you think of the show or leave us a question. All right, to the Nuggets. I was ready to bury them today. I was anticipating burying them. They were shorthanded. I thought there's no way that they're going to beat the Thunder. The Thunder have been the best team in the NBA to start the season, and the Nugs were without Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon. And then, here come the Nuggets. Now, all of a sudden, maybe they got a little something going on here. Sam, they end up winning this game 124-122. Now, they were down 16 in this game. And then Peyton Watson, late in the game, misses 2 free throws. And I thought, that's it. This is where, like, those bench guys who are pressed into starters roles and closing roles are going to end up screwing them over. And then instead, Peyton Watson redeems himself, very Dumb and Dumber style, and he ends up blocking SGA on the final shot. So that's OKC's first loss of the season. Nuggets improved to 5-3. Joker was amazing last night. He had another triple-double. He went for 23, 20, and 16. He's just the 5th player in NBA history to put up that line. Sam, he has 4 triple-doubles this season. The rest of the NBA combined has 6. Like, I thought there's no way he could possibly do more, and he did more.
We're going to do the thing in January and February and March where we look at the standings and we go like, man, it's really Jason Tatum's time for MVP, isn't it? Or like, man, it's really SGA's time for MVP. And, he has this stat and he has this record. Jokic is the best player. Like, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah. Right? Like, I guess I have to nominally say, like, I guess he could get hurt. But, like, I'm just looking at this and thinking, how could anybody else win MVP with this guy at his peak? Like, for the first time since peak LeBron, I look at Jokic and say, not only do we have a clear best player, we have a best player who's in a tier by himself. Like, I felt at times watching him last night with the way Oklahoma City was getting away with fouling him, like, this feels a little bit like Shaq, right? Like, there just aren't really rules for him because if you called fouls against him at the rate you did against normal players, he'd be at the line 15 times a game. Like, He is so clearly ahead of the rest of the NBA. I'm kind of at a loss over this, right? Like, I knew he was this good, but like, for them to win with, like, if you really trace it back to last year and you take KCP out, they lived and died off of the starting 5 last season that they only had 2 of the players for last night, right? Like, Christian Brown comes in and he's like already very, very good. And Peyton Watson fills in for Aaron Gordon and is, I don't want to say as good as Gordon, but like filling the same role totally functionally. And look, I can't believe I'm in a position to do this. I'm going to defend Russell Westbrook.
Okay, let's do it.
So here's the thing about Denver as a whole. Their bench last year was so bad every single night.
Horrendous.
Getting a guy who is that bad like 70% of the time, but incredible the other 30% of the time, actually represents a meaningful upgrade, right? Like, they have won 5 games this season, and you could argue that 3 of them were pretty dependent on Russell Westbrook being awesome, right? The second Raptors game, the Nets game, and then last night against the Thunder, they might be, 2-6 without Russell Westbrook right now. Their bench otherwise is that bad. If Reggie Jackson was in his place, they probably only have 2 or 3 wins right now. So, look, if Jokic can fix Westbrook and make him a viable like role player, as the Lakers couldn't, as the Clippers couldn't, like, that's just another notch in his MVP belt. When, like, I don't want to declare the MVP race over after 2 weeks. I'm just watching him and going, I don't know how you could possibly give it to anybody else.
Yeah, what a magician. I mean, I guess the question would be where Denver finishes in the Western Conference, right? Because yes,
who cares? He won it as a 6 seed.
Yeah. I mean, like, if we're talking, I think right now we're looking at reasons, as you were mentioning earlier, like, we're kind of looking at, isn't it Tatum's year? Isn't it SGA's year? Isn't it somebody else's, Luka's year, somebody else's year, right? Luka came in as the favorite, but probably wouldn't be right now. But if we're looking at it just as who's the best player in the NBA, it's obviously Joker. I mean, he's been incredible. And for him to pull off that win last night where I love the way that he stage manages the entire thing, the whole operation. He's pointing guys in different directions and the way he passes guys open and finds good shots for them. And, like Peyton Watson passed up a couple open threes last night where Joker threw at him because he was like a little bit gun shy. But you can see that like Joker's got an idea of where everybody should be and what everybody should be doing at any given time. And it just changes everything. Now, I am still a little concerned about their depth. Unlike the Warriors, who have incredible depth, the Nuggets were thin to begin with, and then Jamal Murray is not available, and Aaron Gordon's out for a while, and you take Peyton Watson and you thrust him into the starting role, and yes, Russ, 30% of the time gives you something like last night, but I'm still obviously not like huge on Russ here. He had 29 points on 15 shots last night. He was very good. They didn't close with him, though. Then you're asking guys like Julian Strawther to do stuff, Zeke Naji. They have, for casuals out there, Hunter Tyson, who nobody has heard of, because of course you haven't. Like, this is a very, very thin roster, and you're asking a ton of Joker. He's been super durable. He's always out there. He's always available. I just it's hard for me to imagine that like a team that thin could really do I think middle of the pack for them in the West is probably about right.
I think, okay, that's reasonable. Just what I would say is they won 49 games with no Murray and no Porter one year, right? Like, I think Jokic creates such a high baseline that they're not going to be a top seed. That's just kind of the reality of their roster as it currently exists. I just can't see them slipping beyond like 5 or 6.
No, I was saying like 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, exactly. Something that I'm going to be curious to track as we go along. Just by my eye test, I'm curious if this matches for you. It feels like Watson especially, but also now Christian Brown is a starter, so it's not as much of a problem. But it feels like both of them are a lot better playing a lot of minutes than they are coming in for short stretches. I think Watson, you can really tell, like, he is somebody that needs to play within the flow of a game on offense, especially if he's going to play that Aaron Gordon role where, like, your job is to cut and to score near the basket and to rebound and to defend. I think that's a lot harder to do in 14 minutes than it is in 32. But the last two games, the Raptors game and the Thunder game, like, they really did hinge on could Watson and Brown make a couple of very important wide open threes. And they did in both of those games. And if they can, then this Nuggets team is really in business. If not, well, then they have really serious problems.
I am glad that you mentioned that. And by the way, Christian Brown has been a revelation. I thought losing KCP, putting Christian, like when the Nuggets are like, oh, we've identified our KCP replacement. We already have him. His name is Christian Brown. I was like, what are you talking about? He's been really good, like shockingly good, to the point where like, okay, I got that one wrong. He is not the problem here. I wanted more from MPJ. And last night you got more from MPJ. He was terrible in the first half. He only had 3 points in the first half. And then all of a sudden here comes MPJ. I'm glad that you brought up the shooting though, because last year, last in 3-point attempts, they need more shooting. Everybody was looking at this Nuggets team and going like, if the Celtics are shooting, 53s a game and half the league is shooting 40 or more, right? Like what's the Nuggets doing? Last night, MPJ went 6 for 10 from deep, and Christian Brown was 4 for 8 from deep. That's the kind of volume they need from those two guys.
Yeah, the volume for Brown is going to be so key. He's at like 3.5 3-point attempts per game. They need that number to be like 6 or 7, like roughly where KCP was a year ago. Like the issue with Brown, I was on board with the idea of him becoming a starter. I think he's not KCP in that he's not like your standard 3-and-D guy, but he does a lot of the Aaron Gordon movement stuff. His energy is so high that I thought it could work. What I was really concerned with coming into the year was not having KCP. It was not having Brown off the bench, right? Because if you slot him up, suddenly maybe your starters are okay, but your bench has taken a significant hit. They haven't found really a Braun replacement. I have not been a big fan of Julian Strawther off their bench. So I do still think they need one more guy. But Christian Brown, like, has been everything they've needed him to be as the starting shooting guard. They'd love to have KCP. I don't think the starting lineup misses him except for the shooting volume.
About the shooting thing, and this is not it's a little bit specific to Denver, but I just want to like pull back for just a second and talk about like the league trend of threes here. So last night, the Celtics shot 54 from three. They're averaging 51 threes per game. But oddly, despite the fact that Golden State won, they only took 34. But my point here is that last year, the only team to shoot in the 40s, 40 attempts from three or more per game was the Celtics. This year, there are 6 teams taking 40 or more threes per game. And by the way, it's really kind of 9 because the Wiz, the Thunder, and the Suns are at like 39.5. So essentially, Sam, like a third of the league is taking around 40 or more 3-point attempts per game. And like some people have like pointed this out and said that they don't like it and it's ruining. I just want to know, 1, where you are, and 2, like we're never going back, right?
Yeah, so if you're asking me as a fan, do I like it? I like a balance of different types of shots, right? Like, I think the caveman ball of like 2002, I'm glad that that's gone. I
Same.
do think we've moved a little bit too far in the other direction where I don't have a problem with threes. What I do have a problem with are teams all trying to create the same shots. I just think that homogenizes the game a little bit too much. There have been some ideas that have floated around. Like, one that I like is introduce a 3 in the corner tech, like we have 3 in the key, just to make sure that guys are moving and not just camping out in the corners. There's just things like that I'd like to try at the G League. The volume has gotten a little bit high for my taste. Like, Boston is probably going to become the first team in NBA history this year to take more 3s than 2s.
Yep.
That feels a little bit extreme to me, and it feels like it stresses defenses in a way that I don't really have a fix for, and I just like a balance between offense and defense. So my answer would be I want it to be a little bit more 2-point heavy. I want to open things up a little bit more for the post-ups and the mid-range stuff. But the people who like really idolize the early 2000s, late 90s game where it's all mid-range ISOs, like, no, get out of here. That's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we probably should have seen coming when JJ Redick coming into the season said that he wanted the Lakers to shoot 50 a game. And I laughed him off. I was like, how are you going to pull that off, guy? Like, you don't have the personnel for it. And then last night in a loss, which we're going to get into after a quick break, they did that. They put up 48 last night, which is absolutely ridiculous. Didn't work out for them. Hasn't worked out for the Lakers on this road trip. And we're going to get into that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about the Lakers' disastrous 5-game road trip that they are very happy is over. That's coming up next. This is Beyond the Arc.
Today, with the support of the NFL, a new playbook is being written. The National Gay Flag Football League provides inclusive play for over 4,000 LGBTQ plus players and allies. Here is a home with no penalty for being you.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. If you're listening to us in podcast form, we thank you, but we also remind you that you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. We are live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, live on YouTube at noon Eastern. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. All right, the Lakers, Sam, started off the season 3-0. They go on a 5-game road trip. They come back there 4-4. They were 1-4 on that road trip. That includes a loss to the Pistons and an ugly loss to the Grizz last night, 131-114. They've now lost. They've lost those 2 games. It didn't look good. Now they didn't have Anthony Davis and they didn't have Rui, but as these things go, not a great return. Like the Lakers are limping back into a game on Friday against the Sixers, who are absolutely reeling. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. I don't know which team looks worse right now and which team needs a W more, but from a Lakers perspective, not good at this moment.
Yeah, the Lakers have 4 good players, and last night they didn't have 2 of them. It's kind of that simple, right?
Good point.
Like, I remember the game they played against Phoenix, which was their first loss. They had to close with Gabe Vincent on the floor. And the reason they had to do that is because D'Angelo Russell was D'Angelo Russelling, right? And, like, by the way, JJ Redick, you just know that your head coach is a former NBA Twitter guy because it took him, like, 2 weeks to start criticizing D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah,
it was very on brand last night where he criticized the effort and pull up the quote if you have it.
Yeah. Let me stop you there. I was gonna ask you if this was on your radar. Obviously, it is, and whether or not there's any concerns here because JJ postgame was asked about this, and he said LeBron, who's almost 40 years old, competed the hardest. By the way, LeBron's 1,500 game last night. He had a monster. He went for 39, 7, and 6. He was outrageous shooting. but he was also minus 21 because all the guys around him, as JJ pointed out, weren't exactly efforting. And so JJ said, D'Angelo Russell only played 22 minutes because of a lack of effort. And he said, a quote, a lack of attention to detail. He also said that D'Lo reverted to bad habits. You and I, when we talk, we tend to talk more basketball and numbers and X's and O's. This is more like a vibes thing. Like, how worried would you be about those vibes?
Yeah, I mean, it's so early in the season for the head coach to be criticizing the team. Like, it's really rare that you see that after like 2 weeks and things turn out to be okay. The only example I really remember is a few years ago, Ime Udoka would go after his guys after like every game, and it worked out and they made the NBA Finals. I don't think the NBA Finals are in the future for the Lakers, but like the D'Angelo Russell thing is kind of what D'Angelo Russell has been his entire career. Like, attention to detail and effort have never been the things he's been known for, right? And like, I look up and down this roster, and everybody they use outside of LeBron, AD, Rui, and Reeves has some fatal flaw. Like, to go back to that Phoenix game they lost, they put Gabe Vincent on the floor because everybody else had some reason or another that they couldn't be out there. So Kevin Durant sees 5'11" Gabe Vincent and just hunts him every possession down the stretch. JJ came after Gabe Vincent. It was either yesterday or a couple days ago where he said, I don't know how you can play 18 minutes and not get a shot up, right? Like, this is a roster problem. This isn't a coach problem. There's not much you can do when you only have 4 good players on your team. I don't know what the solution to this is other than, like, can you make a single trade that brings you back Alex Caruso, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Kyle Kuzma? I don't have an answer other than that. Like, this is a front office thing. I think JJ has largely done very well as the Lakers head coach. He just doesn't have ingredients to cook with.
Okay. All right. I'm going to push back a little bit here. And listeners and viewers of the show know that I have defended JJ a lot. I'm a big fan of JJ. I think he's extremely smart. But to the point about him saying the other night, like, I don't know how you can be an NBA player with Gabe Vincent and not get a shot up, right? And also what I was saying earlier, JJ came into the season going, I want the Lakers to shoot 53s a game. You don't really have the personnel for it, guy, but good luck. Although last night they shot 48. So he goes after D'Angelo Russell, right? Okay, he's an easy guy to pick on. But what you're saying about how you want to play, how you want to shoot a lot of threes, D'Angelo Russell is one of your most viable shooters. And last night, in 22 minutes, he jacked up 9 of them. So, like, you can't have it both ways, man. You can't go, oh, we want to play a certain way, we need to get up more threes, and then look at one of the few guys on your roster who can actually shoot the three and get his own shot and go, no, he's not doing it for me.
I will say D'Angelo Russell, the Lakers record holder for most three-pointers in the season, which is just, it feels wrong to me when you're a team with as much history as they are for him to have a record that significant. But
Fair.
I do see what you're saying, right? But my counter would be, I don't know why Gabe Vincent can't put up that many threes, right? Like, I don't know why Austin Reeves can't take more threes. But my point is, like, I'm not arguing with D'Angelo Russell's, like, that is what makes him a good NBA player.
Yeah.
Like, what makes him a highly paid NBA player. JJ is trying to instill a certain level of attention to detail and organization in this team that was absent last year, right? Like, last year under Darvin Ham, this team was an unorganized mess. They never ran set offense. The defense had lapses all the time. They've been better on those fronts this year. It's just that D'Angelo Russell is like, he has these flaws that perk up every single year, and he puts up the numbers that make you forget that for like stretches. But then you get to fourth quarters and you get to high leverage moments. And of course, yeah, he's going to miss a switch on defense, or he's going to take a bizarre walk up three with 19 on the shot clock, right? Like, I see why he's frustrated with Russell. It's more just, to me, if they had a better roster, this would be less of an issue.
Yes,
if you had a viable fifth closer that was named anything other than D'Angelo Russell, then you'd have an easier time playing Russell 22 minutes when he has weird games like that.
Yeah, I just look at, I agree with you completely on it's a roster construction issue, but you have the guys you have. And if you have already stated that this is the way that you want to play, I got bad news for you. D'Angelo Russell's your best option. And so for JJ to kind of throw a little bit of a fit last night, that was like the one crack so far this season where I was like, I'm not on board with this decision by JJ to blame D'Lo when you're trying to play a certain way and he's one of the most useful players that you have in that role. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think really what it redounds to is when AD is available, the Lakers are a good team. And when AD is not available, the Lakers are not a very good team. And it really comes down to that. Well, we have to do a quick requisite Bronny James played conversation, just because like we are contractually obligated, as all basketball talkers are, to discuss Bronny when he gets in. He got in last night in garbage time. He played 5 minutes. He got up 2 threes. He didn't make either of them. He made 2 free throws. Still on the team.
John, he set an NBA record last night. He and his dad have now broken their own record for most combined points by a father and son in an NBA game. They had 41 combined points last night, breaking their previous record of 28, breaking the world's previous record of 0.
Of 0, yeah. So congratulations to Bronny. South Bay Lakers, what are we doing? They exist. He should be over there. All right, we have to get into this last, I guess, like nominally LA based story. It's really more about the Sixers because the Sixers were in town. Paul George came back to Los Angeles to play his former team, the Clippers, and the Clippers smacked him and his current team, the Sixers, 110-98. PG played 24 minutes. He had 18 points. I thought it looked fine. The rest of the team did not. He got booed, by the way. Clippers fans, bless your heart. I know what you were trying to do. It didn't feel like your heart was really in it. It was like there weren't a lot of people there. Bill Ryder, our NBA insider, was at the game last night. He texted us and said the wall looks sad because nobody had shown up on time, because that's kind of what happens in LA. It takes people a while to get there. But their heart didn't seem like it was in it. Every time he got the ball, they booed him. And then afterwards, PG said it didn't make any sense, and he was in his feelings about it. I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
That's probably the single dumbest instance of booing I ever remember in the NBA. Booing should represent a legitimate grievance between a player and a fan base. I don't know what the grievance is here, right? Like, Paul George didn't demand a trade. He didn't do a LeBron thing, right? Where like he's a free agent and he got max offers from everybody and he spurned you in some significant way. Paul George left because another team offered him more money. And he was very, very public about this.
Yes.
He wanted to stay with the Clippers, right? Like, they didn't make him a reasonable offer. At one point, he even did, according to him, he said this on his podcast, he was willing to stay for the money that Kawhi took, but he wanted a no-trade clause. And that's an important thing to want when you're signing with the Clippers, given their history with Blake Griffin. Well, the Clippers said no. I don't know how you're supposed to boo him. Like, what has he done that was boo-worthy, right? Like, all he did as a Clipper was take you to the conference finals for the first time in franchise history. Did that without Kawhi. Oh, we're mad that we gave up so much to get him. Well, blame Kawhi for that, because Kawhi was the one who made them trade all that stuff to get Paul George, right? Kawhi could have just signed and said, you know what? I'm cool with this SGA guy. Let's keep the picks and we'll figure out the team on the fly. If you're going to boo anyone, boo Kawhi. I don't know why Paul George deserves to be booed. This makes no sense to me.
It's basically like you and Paul George had a powwow, a little huddle about this take that you had, because Paul George said the exact same thing last night. He's like, look, they offered me a team-friendly deal. A different team offered me more money. I took more money. It's pretty basic business sense. By the way, I would have expected something like that from like Philly, because we love to boo. It's just like sort of in our DNA. LA is not really equipped for it, and Clippers fans definitely aren't equipped for it. Now, we have to discuss the disaster that is the Philadelphia 76ers, because they lose that game last night, Sam. They're 1-6. They have the worst record in the NBA. In the history of the NBA, only 12 teams have made the playoffs after starting 1-6. In the history of the NBA, only one team has ever made it to the finals after having a start that bad. That was the Sonics back in 77-78. They started 1-7. This is an abject disaster. Everybody keeps saying, I want to know where you are on this, but everybody keeps saying, oh, there's reinforcements coming. PG came back. Joel Embiid is down the line. He's got 2 more games on a suspension. He's expected to play on Tuesday in the NBA Cup game against the Knicks. If they are 1-8 when he gets back, I don't think this thing matters. Look, they're in the Eastern Conference. That helps a little bit because there's only 2 real good teams in the Eastern Conference right now. But you have such a hole to dig out of. I have a hard time looking at this team going, oh, they've got 11 new players. They obviously don't know how to play together. The offense is completely lost. But if you add in Joel Embiid, who hasn't played all season, has an injury history, who knows what kind of health he's in, that's going to fix everything. They'll be fine.
The big advantage that they have is that they're in the East and not the West, right? If you're in the West and you start 1-6, like you might be 3 or 4 games behind the team at number 10, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the East is so bad and so thin, at least in the middle and the bottom, that I'm still very, very confident that they're at least going to be able to get up to number 10, which is all you need to do. Obviously, you'd like to get up to 6. They're going to get at least into the play-in just by virtue of being in the East. And when you have that much talent, I still feel relatively comfortable picking them in a single game setting. So, like, I'm not overly concerned with the record. I'm much more concerned about the injuries and the depth because right now it's November 7th today, and all 3 of their stars have gotten hurt at least once, right? Like they have a lot of role players on this team that only really make sense in the context of having 3 stars, right? Like Caleb Martin is an awesome guy to have on your team when you have 3 stars drawing attention and he's doing what he did in the Eastern Conference Finals a few years ago and just bombing away wide open threes. Like go up and down this roster. It's not high-end role players like, say, the Knicks have or the Celtics have or like Cleveland has. They're guys who are like probably on a normal good team 18 to 20-minute players. There's a reason Kelly Oubre was making the minimum last year, right? Like there's a reason Gershon Yabusele was out of the NBA. These guys can function within a team with 3 superstars. What we've seen so far this year is that they're sorely overmatched when you have one of them on the court or 2 of them on the court, or God forbid, none of them on the court.
Well, I mean, like we said, so, okay, everybody's waiting for Embiid to come back, right? And PG to come back. PG comes back. Embiid's not back yet. Now they lose Maxey with a hamstring for a couple of weeks. That's a disaster for a team that even when Maxey was out there, terrible passing team, worst passing team in the NBA, very few ways to generate points. All these ancillary players who are supposed to be like, oh, won't these be great satellite players around, the sun system of 3 players that is, PG and Embiid and Maxey? Well, like, they haven't either been out there or they're hurt or, they haven't played together. Like this entire team is a new team. And it just, I have a very hard time believing with 11 new players and the injury history and just like the star-crossed snake-bitten franchise that is the Sixers, that all of a sudden they're going to, I hear what you're saying about the Eastern Conference. I get it. But I've watched all of this basketball and it has been horrible. And I guess like 'twas ever thus on this podcast that my co-host is more optimistic about the Sixers than I am, but I do not have any optimism about this team. None.
So it's like not the biggest problem at the moment just because they haven't had any of the stars on the floor together for any significant stretch of time. I also do just want to point out they play Phoenix on, I believe, Monday night. And down the stretch, Tyrese Maxey, who's already scored 30+, barely touches the ball. And Paul George runs the offense, I think 5 of the last 6 possessions, and they come away with no points on those possessions. Like, there's also, on top of all of this, a pretty clear hierarchy thing that they need to figure out that they clearly haven't yet, that isn't even going to start until they have all 3 of those guys on the court at the same time. Like, there is stuff they have to work through that they haven't even touched yet.
You just touched on something that I think is important without actually naming the name. And that's that naturally, almost by default, everybody goes, Nick Nurse is amazing. He's a good coach. And I think he is. I do. But this year, Nick Nurse has not coached well. He's had this group of guys. He's known for getting more from less, right? He has not done that with these core pieces these ancillary pieces that they add in. He hasn't figured out a way to use all these guys. His coaching challenges have been an absolute abject disaster. I keep waiting for Nick Nurse to coach these guys up and figure out how to get the most out of Caleb Martin and some of these other guys. And he has not done that. And they need him now more than they ever have because again, 1-6. So on Friday, they got the Lakers. Then they've got the Hornets at home. Then they've got the Knicks in the cup game. And then next week, by the way, Tuesday is the Knicks game, right? That's when Embiid is supposed to come back. Embiid has already said he's not playing back-to-backs. Guess what? They have a back-to-back on Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday. First, it's the Knicks on Tuesday. Then they get Cleveland, of all teams, on Wednesday, and then Orlando after that. And yes, Orlando is missing Paolo Banchero, but they're still a functional NBA basketball team. I don't like this schedule for them. They could very easily be 1-8 going into that Knicks game, and then they got Cleveland right after. Doesn't look good.
You know who really wins this whole scenario is the NBA, because now it's only the 3rd week of the season. Next week will be the 4th week. Philly going into an NBA Cup game, which the NBA really is prioritizing, is it a must-win situation, right? Like, Knicks Sixers is kind of a must-watch game now, right? Because every game is so important to Philly at this stage of the season. Joel Embiid's debut, like, that game is going to do numbers. People are going to watch that one.
I know that we haven't done like a year or two's worth of shows, and we're still getting to know each other, and you're on Thursdays and stuff. But I need you to put me out of my misery. I've suffered through a lifetime of this. We're November, and you just said the Sixers are going to be in a must-win game. Why do any Philly sports exist? They should disband all of them. The city would be so much better off. It's our entire collective identity for everybody from Philadelphia is wrapped up in these stupid sports teams, and they do nothing but harm us.
John, I have 3 words for you. Are you ready? Jets, Mets, Knicks. It's no easier over here. I can assure you.
Fair enough. Misery and company. Schadenfreude is a functionally Philadelphian word. All right, let's do team of the night. You go first. Who do you got team of the night?
I want to talk about the Toronto Raptors, who are the gambling team of the year so far. They are 2-7 straight up, and they are 7-2 against the spread. If you are a bettor looking for sharp plays, something I might suggest that you could look into is pregame, take the Raptors money line, and then at the start of the fourth quarter, bet on the other team's money line. And the reason I say this is because the Raptors for 3 quarters are all intensity and defense and energy, and it's a blast to watch. If you haven't watched Jamal Shed yet, I know I've extolled his virtues before on this show. He is just a delight. Jonathan Mobo, another rookie who's great. Like Davion Mitchell doing his off-night stuff. It's awesome. They can't hit the broadside of a barn in the fourth quarter because they have no creation right now. It's all RJ Barrett. So if you like watching young teams who just run around and try really hard but can't score late in games, the Raptors are for you. If you're better, that's something to look into.
I saw you on Twitter before we started the show saying that you were going to squeeze some Raptors talk in. I was like, how's he going to do that? Nicely done. Can we get IQ back, please? We got like not even a half of basketball out of that kid. I was so excited to watch him this year, and now like he's still dealing with a pelvic injury.
They're just kind of the perfect tanker. They didn't plan for these injuries, obviously, but This is kind of working out nicely for them in that, sure, you'd rather have Quickly, but you're getting all of these minutes for the young guys that otherwise might not have gotten them, that are helping them as like an evaluation tool for the future. It's helping them lose games and get a better pick going into next year. Like, I look at this Raptors team, what I ultimately think is everybody is like 2 roles too high in a normal hierarchy. Like, man, I'd feel much better if RJ Barrett was my 4th best player than my 2nd best player.
Sure.
But if this tank goes successfully, maybe that's how it turns out. So I hope they do get Quickly back soon. I want to see Quickly. I want to see Barnes. For now, I'm just really enjoying the ultra scrappy Gambler's Dream Raptors.
That is 100% more Raptors talk than I expected that we'd have pretty much all season. So nicely done for you for fitting that in. My team of the night's an easy one. It's the Cavs. They're 9-0 for the first time in franchise history. Kenny Atkinson, what a revelation. He ties the record for most consecutive wins to start with the new team. Sam, they've scored 130 points or more 4 times this season in 9 games. They did that 4 times all of last season. So they're already like that offense is absolutely humming, and their offensive rating, by the way, is basically the same as what the Celtics did last season when they set an NBA record. By the way, the Celtics offense this season is like just a tick below that. So the Celtics are still humming too, but I don't think anybody expected, Cavs fans certainly didn't expect the Cavs to be this good, but there's something to be said for continuity, right? I mean, like, and also Darius Garland looking like Darius Garland again. Now they've got 2 guards that are exceptional, and they've got 2 bigs that are exceptional. It's a real team.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the offense is they're not doing it in the ways that typical great offenses do, right? Like, we're in the heliocentric era where like, oh, everything orbits around Jokic, everything orbits around Luka. The Cavs don't have a single player in the top 50 in the NBA in touches per game. And yet, if you look at their touch per game tracking stats, Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley are all basically even. They're all between 60 and 56 per game. It's a really interesting way of running a team where you are kind of playing like on a possession-by-possession basis. You are very much playing through one guy at a time. It's just who that guy is keeps changing depending on matchup, depending on who's hot. Donovan Mitchell taking fewer shots per game than he has since he was a rookie, but That's empowered Darius Garland to play really well. It's empowered Evan Mobley to be much more of a creator. It's obviously opened a lot of stuff for Jared Allen near the basket. Like, they've landed on this really egalitarian playing style that is somehow also not very pass happy. It's very much more like, oh, we're going to get Mitchell in his position on this possession. And then next it's going to be a Garland possession. And, oh, we're going to let Mobley run his pick and roll with a shooter here. Like, it's very much your turn, my turn, but it's working because they have so many different ways of doing it with so many different guys. They've been really, really fun to watch. I knew they were going to be good on defense. Did not see this offense coming.
Did not see it coming. Did not see, by the way, you bringing up Raptors and the words egalitarian and heliocentric in one show. So just full marks for Sam Quinn on Thursday's episode. Really well done by you. And also your whole weird milk thing. You just like a fantastic episode and effort out of you, Sam Quinn. What do you got cooking on CBSSports.com?
Let's see. Last night I wrote about Paul George, who shouldn't have been booed. He absolutely shouldn't have been. We covered that on the show. Yes. I also wrote about Neemias Queta, who stepped in for the Celtics, had a great game. I wrote about how useful it is for Boston, the team that only shoots threes, to have one guy on the team who's just really athletic and can dunk a lot. So look out for that. There will be more stuff after that. John, we haven't done that many shows together. I can assure you, my cereal thing is not a top 5 weird Sam food take. So we're going to have plenty more food conversations on this show.
I can't wait. Be sure to check that out next week. Next week, you're actually going to join us on Tuesday. So Sam will be back on Tuesday next week. And then for tomorrow, Bill Ryder is back. He's going to be with Brad Bach, and you can catch the two of them live on YouTube at noon Eastern. That's at Beyond the Arc CBS on YouTube. But for now, for the prolific, incomparable Sam Quinn, go check him out on CBSSports.com. I'm John Gonzalez. That's it for us today, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in.